Hello and welcome to this week's pet pairing. I actually have some new makeup to play with, so today, aside from the good old things that you're familiar with, you're also going to see two new products. I'm going to start doing my makeup because I'm a little bit in a hurry. I have the Inglot Eyeshadow Keeper here to start off with. Speaking of new things to play with, out of the blue, on Monday I received another tracking number from Pat McGrath Labs, and since none of the tracking numbers that I had received for the, or maybe just to put it in context in case you are like, what the fuck are you talking about? So I made a purchase in the end of March with 3 of the new bronzers and the new, I already forgot the name of the quad. Venusian Sunrise? Maybe it's Venusian Sunrise, like I've already blacked out about it. Anyway, so I ordered the new quad together with the bronzers. I was really excited about it because it is very similar in terms of its layout and I guess functionality to Voyeuristic Vixen. And Voyeuristic Vixen from the blush release was one of my favorites, is one of my favorite quads from her. So I ordered it, then I was aware of the fact that the quads are going to ship out a little bit later, but then I received a shipping notification, I want to say already in the first like half of the month of April, and I was really excited, just waiting, but then nothing happened, and I was like, what the hell is going on? I'm taking the Too Faced Fluff and Hold Brow Wax, and then I wrote them a message, never got a response. Sometime later I received another tracking number, and I'm like, okay, you know, maybe something went wrong with the first one. Again, I wait like 7 days, nothing happens. And then one of you messaged me on Instagram to let me know that you also were struggling to receive your quad and that you had gotten 8 separate tracking notifications for your quad and there was no movement on any of them. And at that point I realized they have not even dispatched the quad, something's going wrong. And then I started writing messages to Pat McGrath Labs customer care every freaking single day for the past 2 weeks. I think I've sent them at least 10 messages. I think maybe close to 15 altogether. For my foundation today, I'm going to take the Studio Water Weight from MAC in the shade NC25. So I kept messaging them daily. I kept not getting a response. I was getting a little bit worried that I'm not even going to see my money back. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue on Monday, I received another tracking number. And I was like, okay, great, another useless tracking number that I can't do anything with. But 10 minutes later, I also received a notification from DHL. And if I receive a notification from DHL, that usually means that the product has actually been dispatched and is on its way. So, to cut the long story short, that quad is coming. It's arriving allegedly tomorrow. And I will try to film with it Friday morning before we are off to Amsterdam. I mentioned in my previous, I think, pet pairing that we are going to Amsterdam for the weekend to celebrate our 10-year wedding anniversary by visiting the Rijksmuseum and going to a Broadway musical. Anywho, so I will try to film Friday morning. I will probably not have time to edit the video or upload it before Sunday, but it is coming. My only concern is that I've, in the meantime, watched several reviews from other people and the quad does not look overly exciting. I was sort of hoping that the photos of the flaky shade in the quad are just, you know, not being done justice by swatches and all, and that there is more to it than just a copper gold or a bronze gold or whatever it's supposed to be. And that mixed in with my disappointment for not receiving the quad for such a long time and having to deal with Pat's customer service, I'll tell you, I'm preparing myself a little bit for a disappointment here, I'm not gonna lie. I'm going to take the First Aid Beauty Bendy Avocado Concealer in the shade 2, which is fair. I think mine is almost finished. At this point I'm just scraping the walls. But that's good, then I can focus on finishing other concealers and wait for the concealer that Lisa Eldridge is going to release, because that is probably one of my biggest hopes for a concealer for me. I'm curious, for those of you who already received their Venusian Sunrise quad, what do you think about it? Do you think it is as good as Voyeuristic Vixen, or does it look a little bit as it is on the photos, that Voyeuristic Vixen remains superior because it is more versatile? That's a little bit my fear. and why I'm preparing for disappointment. But perhaps I am wrong, perhaps that flaky shade is going to steal my heart and make me eat my words. I'm just a little concerned, let's put it that way. I'm trying to get back into this MAC foundation that I just applied on my face because the last few times I used it, I wasn't really happy with how it wore throughout the day, so I'm just testing it out with different powders. I'm going to do the Charlotte Tilbury oh, that one is always so difficult for me to say. The Airbrush Flawless Finish, because it is my most hardcore powder in the sense that it's the most mattifying one. So if the foundation doesn't hold with that powder, then there's really not much hope for it. It's very strange though, because that foundation is quite a literal dupe for the Estee Lauder Double Wear Nude Foundation, and I used to really like it, and I don't know whether something has changed again with my skin, because you know, your hormones, once you're past the age of 35, basically change their mind about what they're going to do every 5 seconds. And that means that you're going to experience huge changes also in the way your skin behaves. So let's see how this foundation behaves today. I would be very sad if it doesn't work because it was one of my favorites. I really like the finish. It's a beautiful natural light coverage foundation. Let's hope this works. Alright, let's talk about the two new items that I have. I have a new bronzer and a new blush from Gucci. Let's start with the bronzer. This is my first Dior color powder type product from Dior, and I am actually quite excited about it. I've always thought that this packaging looks so luxurious and so beautiful with like the little leather on top here with the logo of Dior. And I watched Sophia C's Beauty recently, and she spoke very highly of the formula of these, what are they called? The natural bronze. And the shade that I picked up is very deep because I have now a mild obsession with deeper shades of bronzer with a red undertone to them. You can see a pattern here since I picked up Mahogany from Pat McGrath Labs as well. We are going to compare the two shades, but I was just very intrigued by the formula. Only I went in the store and I swatched the lighter shades, and all of the lighter shades, at least in the swatch in the store lighting, pulled very yellow, and that's not at all the undertone that I was going for. I just wanted something of a deeper shade and something with a red undertone. And unfortunately they didn't have this shade in store. So I had to rely on Google and Temptalia to let me know exactly what this bronzer is supposed to look like the most. And according to Temptalia, this specific shade had really strong red tones to it, especially once you start buffing it on the skin. And she also complimented this specific formula for being very buildable, and this specific color just having a very nice texture and buildability to it, which made me even more intrigued. So this is the bronzer we're trying today. Let me pull out Mahogany from Pat McGrath Labs so that we can compare them. Let me show you just visually the two pans next to each other. You can see this has a little bit more warmth, whereas the shade from Pat is more of a neutral bronze really. But let me show you the swatches. The texture of this powder just feels like silk. It is so, so beautiful. So this is the one from Pat, this is the Dior one. You can clearly tell that the one from Dior has just more warmth to it compared to the one from Pat. Let's see. Pat Bronze Mahogany versus Dior Natural Skin Bronze in the shade Deep, which is, I think, the number 8. I think they both have a bit of a neutrality to them, especially when you compare them to other bronzers, which I did yesterday. Other bronzers which are much more like warm orange leaning. These have a bit of neutrality to them, but when you compare the two to each other, I think the one from Pat is even more neutral toned compared to the one from Dior. The one from Dior still retains a little bit of warmth, and hopefully it will also pull a little bit red on my skin. And now let's try the bronzer actually. I will try to go in with a light hand because I mean it is a deep shade that is not really meant for my skin tone. So, oh yes, it is definitely a dark shade. Let's blend it out though, because I feel like the formula is very malleable and very blendable. Wow, that is a really beautiful formula. It really blends out very easily. Let me put a little bit here. I will apply just the tiniest bit more, like the absolute tiniest bit more, just so we can tell the undertones a little bit better. But I do think this has red undertones to it, without being like red. It has warm red undertones to it. I quite like it. Okay, let's do my better cheek. Ironically, I always demo like bronzers and blushes on this cheek because in terms of an angle on my camera, it's better, but this is actually my better cheek. I don't really know why there is a difference in the way products blend and look on my cheeks, on my left versus my right cheek. That is absolutely ridiculous, but it is a fact of life that this is my good cheek and this is my bad cheek. So actually, for me personally, I always tell a little bit better how a product performs by looking at my right cheek. Okay, so let's see. And my good cheek. I do think that the color is really pretty. I think there's a little bit of neutrality, but also a little bit of warmth and those slight red undertones. I'm actually pretty happy. I'm curious how this would look once I get a tan. And yes, I know that I'm being absolutely ridiculous for purchasing another bronzer in the same year that I already purchased 3 others. But I don't know what to tell you. I'm in my bronzer phase. Just in the past year, I have doubled my collection of bronzers. And I think it partly has to do with the fact that for the longest time, I literally had like 5 bronzers in my collection, which were like a few powders and a few creams. And I was rotating through them really well, but maybe I just got a little bit bored with them. Some of them are really old, like from 2016 old, and I'm going to leave them in my collection because they still perform really well. So yes, the amount of bronzers I have accumulated is pretty ridiculous, but you know, given that I rotate through them quite often, they will all get used unless I really dislike them. But if I really dislike them, I'm just going to declutter them. Anywho, final thoughts. I think this formula is really beautiful. I think it's quite remarkable that it has a little bit of luminosity to it, even though it looks like a flat matte in the pan. It doesn't have pearl, but it has a little bit of a sheen to it, which I really like. I think the color is really pretty. Yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with my purchase, and the packaging is obviously stunning. Now let's talk about the blush. The blush is another one of the beautiful Gucci blushes that were released last summer. I'm completely obsessed with the first shade that I purchased, the shade Rosy Beige. But Rosy Beige is more of a winter blush for me. It's that very like cool toned mauvey pink, and I'm not really going to get much use out of that in the summer. And I just felt really sad for not being able to pull out this beautiful packaging in the upcoming months. And if I'm being honest with you, I've been lusting after this shade ever since I saw it. Like Rosy Beige and this shade, this is the shade Tender Apricot, which is this beautiful like true pastel apricot. They were both very attractive to me. And I knew that eventually I'm going to pick up this shade as well. Look how soft and beautiful that looks. That is definitely not a peachy shade. It is not a peachy pink. It is not a coral. This is a true light apricot, and I think it's going to look absolutely glorious on the cheeks. So let me put that on my skin ASAP. I think one of my first blushes from Makeup Geek that unfortunately I can't remember the name of now was a very similar shade to this. I panned that blush and I repurchased it. I didn't actually go through the repurchased shade unfortunately because I'm ridiculous, but I always really enjoyed that shade. See, that is a true apricot. I love it. Now let's go to my better cheek because I'm actually not really enjoying what's happening on my left cheek this morning. I don't know why. I'm using a different SPF today because I got a sample of a Lancome SPF and I feel like it is quite tacky and it is disturbing a little bit my base products. But on this cheek it is looking lovely. Oh, so pretty, so fresh, so spring summery. I really enjoy the blush as well. It's very pretty. Alright, let's get into the eyes. I've been into like really relatively simple looks this past week, so I don't think we're going to be doing anything overly complicated today. I'm going to take a little bit of statuesque through my crease, then I'm going to take the shade Bronze, which is this one here from my C3PO palette. This shade has been re-promoted quite a few times though. I have it also in my Metamorphosis 6 pan, and you will probably have it in your Celestial Divinity palettes. But it is a beautiful like bronzy orange shade, so I'm going to try to match that a little bit to my clothing. And I do want to add a little bit of sparkle over top of that, so I'm actually going to see whether I can just make this gold a bit more dimensional by adding the sparkle from this flaky like warm coppery bronze gold from the Sublime palette. I'm going to start off with the shade Statuesque through my crease. Ooh, also, let's talk about TV shows again. Well, I've only watched one recently. I binge-watched through Queen Charlotte, which is the newest installment, sort of like a spin-off of the Bridgerton series. It's not really about any of the Bridgerton family members. It is about Queen Charlotte falling in love with King George. And I found it actually quite lovely and quite endearing, and I honestly really enjoyed it. I've always thought of Bridgerton as a little bit of like a silly, guilty pleasure type of TV show, and especially in the beginning I was a little bit irritated. I think when I first spoke about season 1, I sort of ridiculed the show a little bit for being compared to Pride and Prejudice, because they're completely different types of stories. Like, yes, they're both romance set in the Victorian era, but other than that, they really have very little in common. Bridgerton should really be considered as like a light romance set in the Regency era. Nothing too heavy of a story, just a little light romance. I enjoyed season 1. I really enjoyed season 2. I think I mentioned that also when I sort of reviewed season 2 on my channel a few months ago during one of those like chatty get ready with me's. I quite enjoyed it because, you know, these like slow burn romances that build up of longing, totally my cup of tea. I really enjoyed season 2, but I thoroughly enjoyed season 3. Season 3 gave me everything. Season 3 made me laugh, season 3 made me cry, and that may be because Shonda Rhimes had something to do with it. I think Shonda actually was more involved in this season than season 1 and season 2. I think the writer of season 1 and 2 is a different person, and I think Shonda wrote season 3. At least that's what I understand. I'm going to put the absolute lightest kiss of this deep brown shade in my outer corners, just the absolute tiniest bit for a little bit of definition, nothing too crazy. And I was actually thinking, if I had started watching Bridgerton and watched Queen Charlotte first, I would have had a different opinion of the show. I wouldn't have thought it that silly. But you know, Queen Charlotte also addresses some topics that are definitely not light. Apparently King George III suffered from mental illness, and he and Queen Charlotte were rather close, and it seems like she was quite a support for him. Obviously they've taken this basis and like invented around it, so what you're going to see in the show is not super based in reality. They've just taken a few historical facts and made a romance story out of it, but the historical facts still are that he did suffer from mental illness and he did have 15 kids with Queen Charlotte. And I'm thinking, even for like the royal duty, you don't have to make 15 kids. So it seems like they really did have a very good relationship. I'm just putting a little bit of that deep shade here very close to my lashes using my fingers, because these fluffy type brushes can't really get to the base of my lashes all too well. Alright, I'm going to apply the absolute tiniest bit of glitter glue to add as much shine to that bronzy metallic shade as possible. The show is only 6 episodes, so that is a shorter run compared to the original Bridgerton shows. And it also tells the story of young Agatha, who is the confidant of Queen Charlotte that you've already seen also in the Bridgerton shows. And the mom of the Bridgertons is also featured quite heavily in this one. It's just quite lovely. I really enjoyed this season. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'm going to take now the bronzy shade with a brush. I don't know if you guys have seen it, and I would be very curious to hear your opinions on it and how you enjoyed it if you saw it. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think they dealt with the whole mental illness issue quite tastefully. I mean, the depiction of his mental illness, nobody really knows exactly what he suffered from. There's been theories that he suffered from bipolar disorder or from porphyria, which was triggered by heavy metal poisoning that was probably present in his cosmetics at the time. Nobody really knows. And especially the last 5 minutes of the show or so I found very moving, and I was really crying when the show ended. Anywho, now taking the topper shade from the Sublime palette, so this one here, just using my fingers. And the idea is, you're not really probably going to see much of that, but I think it's going to add a little bit of dimension to the bronze underneath it, because the bronze underneath it is a beautiful metallic, but it lacks sparkle. and I think this one has quite a fair amount of sparkle in it, especially if you stand under artificial lighting. So it's just going to add a bit of dimension. And none of the two palettes that I'm working with today really have an inner corner highlight shade for me, so I'm just going to take Golden Moonlight. Luckily I'm taking Golden Moonlight because I just realized that I didn't actually finish my face makeup and I didn't apply any highlighter. Isn't that a happy coincidence? Okay, I'm going to apply Golden Moonlight in my inner corners and on my cheekbones. How could I forget highlighter? What is wrong with me? Oh, and this week all of us in Europe, or at least some of us in Europe, are very excited because the Eurovision Song Contest is going on. I watched the first semi-final yesterday. The Netherlands didn't make it through the final, which honestly isn't surprising to me. I didn't like any of the songs yesterday, to be honest with you. I thought they were all very weak, very forgettable and very boring, and they're meant. I know that Eurovision has a certain format for the songs, like they need to be a certain type of song, but some people really like ran with it. Like I was just experiencing a deja vu 90% of the time, because I thought, wait, I think I've heard this song before. Even the Song of the Duchess. So several years ago, the Duchess actually won Eurovision with a song called Arcade. Beautiful song. Very much deserving to win, because while it was a very Eurovision song, it also had a very unique element to it, and I just thought it's a very well deserved win. But the duo that they sent this year, I don't know whether the dude who wrote Arcade, so the song that we won with a couple of years ago, whether he wrote this song as well, but it sounded like that song, just slightly different. I don't know. Keeping the lower lash line really simple and taking statuesque to run here to complete the look. Let's also do lips together, because I have a new Lisa Eldridge lipstick to demo for you. I'm first going to apply my Prep and Prime lip primer from MAC. So I purchased Velvet Blush and the matching lip liner. And the thing about this shade is it is described as a, I think, pink deep berry kind of shade. I describe it as a nude berry, but I think the Lipstick Fairy on Instagram was really spot on describing this lipstick as a rosewood shade. Wait and you'll see. I think the lipstick is absolutely glorious. It is so flattering. I can see the berry undertones in it, but to me, the Lipstick Fairy's description of this color as being a rosewood is really just so much more spot on. And I think I would have felt completely different about this color if it had been described as a rosewood. I'm really happy with how the look turned out. I think the new items that I purchased, so the bronzer, the blush, and the lipstick are all beautiful. I'm very, very happy with everything. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. As usual, thank you so much for watching, and I will hopefully see you very soon to demo the Venusian Sunrise quad from Pat McGrath Labs. Bye!